So we're up to the chapter on practical mysticism. I expect it will take us 2 weeks to get through this. If it doesn't, that's fine. If it does, that's fine. There's a number of topics here. The only thing I would say, I hear an echo?
Yeah. For me?
Yeah.
I'll turn it off speaker.
Okay. What this does is it covers a number of topics and just mentions the mystical approach to them. And this is not the mystical.
Still echoing.
Adele, you're going to need to mute yourself.
Now I'm going to start again.
Anyway, we're not going to. This ain't working.
All right, one more time.
Hit 6. Oh, you can't mute yourself on this. You're not on the conference call.
Yeah, she should have a button on her own phone that says mute.
Okay.
Mine does.
Okay. That's better. Good. You're muted. Anyway. That was a script read, huh? Thank God you're mute.
We love you.
We just love you better, mute. What I'm saying is that there's no attempt to go into any of the topics in this chapter in depth. This is just sort of a preview, and this may well turn out to be topics for many of the next What's that?
Mute it again, Adele.
Adele, it's not working. Sorry. There's just too much noise there. I don't know what that was. You'll have to catch us tomorrow, okay? I don't know what that is, but we're having problems with staying connected to Earth Link and all sorts of things over there, so I think there's something weird about this whole thing. So anyway, let's explore into these things a little bit tonight, but we will perhaps look at each of them and all of them in much more depth in the fall. So go ahead and start, please, Jim.
Practical mysticism. This chapter could as well have been called Living by Grace, but practical mysticism is more fun. It's an oxymoron to human consciousness. Human consciousness is convinced that mysticism is completely impractical, and most Orthodox religions concur. It's been said from many church pulpits and statements such as, "Take no thought for tomorrow, what you shall eat," may have worked in his day, but they're not practical today. What Jesus was talking about was realizing the presence of what is and living a life by grace. The ones speaking from the pulpits are conditioned by human thinking.
The following will hopefully give us a glimpse of the practicality of the mystical consciousness. We will make no attempt at a thorough coverage. This book is an introduction. We will merely try to give an indication of the mystical approach to a few topics.
Living by grace. What is not present in the human experience except when and where it is realized. When we are experiencing the presence of what is, then it is effective in our lives. When we are realizing that we are individual expressions of what is, then what is the content of our individual consciousnesses. And that determines the nature of what is formed as our human experiences. This is called grace. Grace and the realization of the presence of what is are identical.
We tend to think of grace as something that can happen, but is perhaps not happening now. Maybe it will come to us sometime in the future. But when we talk from the mystical standpoint, everything is already done. what is outside of time and space. Everything in what is finished. When we talk about coming into grace, we're not talking about what is deciding to bestow grace upon us. We're talking about us achieving enough realization of the presence of what is to experience the omnipresent, eternal grace that has always been and will always be.
So incredibly simple that we miss it entirely. We experience of what's in our consciousness, nothing more, nothing less. If what is not in our, if what is not in our consciousness.
Our consciousness, sorry.
Okay. Grace is not in our spirit. We sometimes hear about the grace of the Guru. It's the same grace. The fact is that the Guru is illumined, continuously aware of his or her oneness with what is. So by being in the consciousness of our Guru, we are lifted into experiencing the presence of what is, and that's called grace. Grace manifests in our life while we're hanging out in the Guru's consciousness. So grace is omnipresent, and it manifests in our life, i.e., we live by grace to the extent that we realize it.
Okay? Now, that's not what you hear about grace. That's not what most people say about grace. You know, they all talk about maybe God, you know, God bestowing grace here and not bestowing grace there. So, you know, this is of the same thing as the rain falls on the just and the unjust alike. So does grace fall on the just and the unjust alike. Grace is omnipresent, and our lives are lived by grace to the extent that we're aware of the omnipresence of God. And the point is just so incredibly simple, is that I experience what's in my consciousness. So if God's in my consciousness, I experience God. And if advertisements are in my consciousness, I experience advertisements. You know, if the human belief in good and evil is in my consciousness, I experience good and evil. So if I'm realizing the presence or the existence of God, however you want to say that, then I'm experiencing grace, because it's the same thing. When you're experiencing the presence of God, you're experiencing harmony, and you're experiencing fulfillment, and you're experiencing all these things, and that's what we call grace. So they're really one, and that's an important thing to get at the start, because that pretty well determines so much of what follows.
What was with the Guru?
What does the question mean?
What was with the Guru consciousness of your Guru? Did I hear it wrong?
It said what it said. I don't understand the question yet. Why do I have that paragraph in there?
Yeah, it said when you're in the consciousness of your Guru, and then it went on.
It says you hear about the grace of the Guru. It's just saying that's the same thing, right?
Uh-huh.
The grace of the Guru is the same as the grace of God.
Okay, let's go on to the world's favorite topic.
Why?
Why is always the favorite topic of beginning metaphysics and mysticism students. Everyone has some reason for beginning the path, and that seems to be a good one. The problem with supply for most people is that as humans we are conditioned to think in terms of the verb get. I need to get this. I'll get into trouble. I get to go on vacation. I get to come back. Human consciousness is all about getting, and it's all about getting. When we consider supply, we immediately think about getting things. We think about the income, and we think about material things like dollars, stocks, certificates, enough money for dinner, or whatever we think our particular need is. Unfortunately, what is doesn't know anything about getting things, dollars, stocks, certificates, money, or dinner. What is spirit? What is doesn't know about anything material. Materially, it is a concept in mind. Materiality.
instead of looking at supply from the viewpoint of trying to get something, let's go back to mystical truth. We think we're ourselves, these personal senses, but we're in fact ourselves, impersonal, individual expressing of what is. Ourselves are one with the self, facets of the diamond, and the self is completely fulfilled right now. It always has been, it always will be. Fulfillment is true of all of what is, which includes ourselves. So the fulfillment of ourselves is already in existence, already a fact. The only problem is here in our personal senses of self, who believe they are separate from what is and who are not experiencing what is fulfillment because of that belief. If we're not conscious of our oneness with what is, we're not conscious that we are fulfilled, so it's not our experience.
Okay. Everybody with on that one? Okay.
Seems like there can be a lot of confusion between human fulfillment, and knowing the oneness of what is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people have concepts about what fulfillment should look like, and there's a lot of confusion there.
Can I say something about the confusion I had with the guru thing?
Sure.
Was I was listening to Robert today, and someone put a lei on him, and then he took the lei off and put it over a picture of whatever, and he said, and so the student said, I didn't know you worship gurus, and he goes, well, I'm not a guru, as much as you're a guru, as much as they're a guru. So when I'm doing my meditations, there's certain names when I say, they are wonderful for they are my teacher, where it really fits me deeply. And that teaching in my meditation is my guru. And so it was kind of curious when you have that in the paragraph for me, what you were saying. And so it's the grace of the guru, it's the consciousness of the grace of the guru.
Mm-hmm. The point is, I hope it said, is that the guru is one with God, so the guru's consciousness is one with God consciousness. So if you're in the guru's consciousness, you're in God consciousness, and so you're in grace. So, because there's a lot of talk about the grace of the guru, especially in the Eastern world.
Right.
And the point is that there's only one grace.
Yes. If we realize the presence of what is, we realize that as part of the one we are fulfilled. That becomes our experience. And we say the supply is flowing. The outflow of fulfillment of what we read.
Did we read the paragraph before that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did we? Okay, I'm sorry. Actually, go ahead.
Fulfillment of what is into our experience is what we call supply. It was always omnipresent, but now it's in our experience, taking whatever form it needs to take in the universe. Notice the use of the word outflow. Usually what's true in human consciousness is the opposite of what's true in spiritual consciousness. Mystically, supply is outflow, not income. When we consider that what is the only creator, the only source, and that everything out there is an effective creation, we see that there cannot be income. There are no sources out there. So everything must flow from the infinite source through grace, through realization of oneness. Supply is the flowing of the infinity of what is into our experience through our enlightened individual consciousnesses. If we want more of something, we go within to the source, make contact, become more aware of the infinity, and experience it as it expresses in our lives.
Okay, let's stop for a second. Any questions about that? I think we said it before, but do you get it that there can't be any sources out there? It's all effect. The effect is all the outpicturing of consciousness, so it's all effect, so it can't possibly be a source, even though it can appear as a source.
That last sentence, if we want more of something, if we want that to me sounds like if I feel like I have lack, I want more of something. So too.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we're talking to, are people who are interested in supply, right?
But if you're coming from that place already, it seems to me that getting to the source to make the contact would be I'm sticking in there and I'm not sure how to.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. What you're saying is that if you think you're lacking something, you're already locked into lacking something. But I say that in fact, if you think you're lacking something and which will continue even after you've read this book, you will look around and think you're lacking something, and hopefully you'll remember that supply is outflow rather than income, and you will pursue whatever meditation practice you pursue, like a contemplative meditation, and lift yourself in consciousness enough to where you can experience the fact that supply has always been omnipresent. Okay? But, yeah, we will, unfortunately, having finished this book, still experience what appears to be lack. Okay?
Yeah.
Damn. Or not. Or not, maybe not. Yes.
I had an experience with the supply, and I don't know if it was a combination of things, but I had heard that concept many, many times, reading, whatever, the infinite supply, or whatever Joel's books are, and whatever, in hearing that concept of God's not my source, and then, I don't know, I read it one day, I just got, on a deep, I guess what you're talking about, instead of, intellectually knowing it, oh, that's what they mean, and since then, supply hasn't been really an issue.
Yeah.
Not that, but sometimes I still feel it creep back in, that maybe that's human consciousness of thinking that I need something or lacking something.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you can break supply completely. You can break that whole concept, and it will tempt you to pick it back up, because human consciousness is deeply entrenched in lack and getting. But you can solve supply once and for all. You can solve health. You can solve all of these issues once and for all when you get it. That's exactly right. You have a deep click, and after you have the deep click, the words are all the same, but now you got it. And supply is the same way. Okay. Next.
Supply is our experience of what is fulfillment. And since we're experiencing, as the human experiences with five senses, what is infinity is now formed by mind in ways that are meaningful to our human experience, consistent with our material understanding. Our lives start to appear fulfilled. If our need is lunch, supply may look like someone coming by and saying, hey, I've got an extra sandwich in my bag, do you want it? If our need is money, supply looks like someone offering us a job, or some relative we were unaware of sending money in the mail. When we're aware of the presence of what is, the material story unfolds however it needs to fulfill our needs without taking anything from anyone else.
The correct practice of supply is to practice realizing the presence of grace and letting it show forth however it will. If we start outlining what we want it to look like, we're back in humanhood, trying to manifest dollars, automobiles, or whatever we think we need. Being in human consciousness with material things, not in the realization of grace, lined out pictures, not the car, but our belief that we need a car. In fact, we're maintaining the lack of car or lunch or whatever it is that we think we lack, since our beliefs are what are out picturing. The minute we're looking for something material, we're blocking it. The minute we're looking to get something, we're blocking it. But to the extent that we're aware of who we really are, our lives manifest fulfillment, and it will fulfill us specifically. We individually interpret fulfillment in mind. We will find a place to live that meets our standard of living, whatever that might be. Our needs will be met, not what is idea of our needs. What is doesn't know what needs are. It is we who are fulfilled, so it will look like what is appropriate for it to look like in our cases.
There's a lot of stuff in that.
Yeah.
There's two things. I think I'll make that 2 paragraphs. There's 2 important things. One is that if I'm just realizing the presence of God, realizing grace in my life and letting it be what it is, that's one thing. If I'm, and this may come back to your point, if I'm what Meg Johnson used to call outlining, if I'm going to God and telling God what the grace ought to look like, then I'm not going to God, because I'm suddenly talking about what I need. And what I need is material, and God doesn't have any material stuff. God's spirit, and also God doesn't understand what needs are. So by outlining, by saying what it is I want, or what I need, or whatever it is, going to God for anything, telling God what it ought to look like, you're disconnecting from God. The second point there is that, of course, if I'm picturing what I need, I'm ensuring that I will continue to need it, because if I'm picturing what I need, I'm believing that that's what I need, and therefore I'm manifesting not having it. Get that?
Is that part of the reason why metaphysics don't work on a long-term basis?
I'm sorry?
Is that one of the reasons why metaphysics don't work on a permanent basis?
Well, metaphysics has so many different levels of meanings. I mean, if you're talking about mental practice, well, it can work as long as your mind is strong. I mean, that's the most common level of metaphysics is power of the mind. And the power of mind, and the mind is a power. Mind is creative in human experience. We're talking about the fact that right now we're talking about the fact that mind is creative in human experience, but we're not talking about individually applying our mind to be creative. We're talking about the default that either human consciousness is using our mind to create our experience, or God is using our mind to create our experience. So mind is creative. Medicine men and witch doctors and voodoo experts and Australian Aborigines don't have any trouble over the years losing their powers they gain. They grow stronger as they get older, because more and more they see it reinforced by the fact that it's effective.
It's interesting. I will often hear people say, God is working in my life when they get something or something is going what they consider to be really well, but otherwise not hearing that person.
Right.
They win the lottery. God's working in my life.
Well, it goes back to the prayer page.
Yeah.
And that's an awesome description of, well, God took it away because he loves me.
Yeah.
And if God loved you, he would take it away, because while you got that lotto winnings, you're not going to be coming to God. It was
Not for a few months anyway.
Yeah, not for a few months. It was the lack that got you started.
That's what Robert says on one of the CDs. If I give you a check for $10,000, I'd never see you again.
He's probably right. He was talking to Jay at the time. Jay would have been off to India. All right, let's go on. I just wanted to make sure there are a couple of points there, so that could be 2 paragraphs, I think.
The basic rule of spiritual supply is, if we want more of something in our life, we need to express more of it. It's easier to see when we talk about non-material things like love. If we want to experience more love in our lives, we can simply love more. We never feel another's love for us anyway. We may observe behaviors that we are conditioned to believe indicate love, but we cannot experience anyone's love for us. The only love we ever feel is love, the love that we're expressing for someone or something, which in reality is what is this love flowing out through us. That's the point of supply. It's what is love flowing out through us. If we want more love in our lives, we love more. If we want more friendship in our lives, we become more friendly. If we want more stuff in our lives, we let stuff flow out through us. We clean out our closets and give them to the goodwill. We start the outflow because we can and because we know who we are, and fulfillment begins to manifest.
Dollars are no different than love. When you think of dollars as the outpicturing of spiritual supply. See, stuff in spirit multiplies. It's material things that divide. Stuff in spiritual supply multiplies. If a mother loves her son, and she has a second son, she doesn't cut the love in half and love each of them half as much as she loved the first son. She loves them both as much as she loved the first son. So the love is multiplied. And the more kids, none of them get less love. The more kids there are, the more love there is in the mother's life. Okay? That's the way things spiritual multiply. And Jesus, with the loaves and fishes routine that Jesus did, feeding whatever it was, I think he was doing. He was teaching supply. He was teaching supply. He said, what do we have? He started with have, not with how much do we. He didn't say how much do we lack. He said, what do we have? And they said, well, there's some bread and there's some fish. And he says, okay, take it and divide it, pass it out. And they did, and they fed 5,000 because it was not the bread. What was happening was supply was flowing, and it was manifesting in the quantities it needs to.
So what would you say about motive here? Because I feel like love has about as many definitions as metaphysics does. You know, people say they love.
Well, I'm not talking about human love at all.
Okay.
We're talking about there is only one love, and that's the love. And it's not only unconditional, it's selfless.
I was just going to say, so when I first heard this, a long time ago when I first read Infinite Supply, I got into trying my hardest to, give out love and everything. But I think it was coming from my, small sense of self. So I hit a wall and got, really frustrated. But then I realized I just kind of stopped and stepped back. It has to come from, self and capital S.
Yeah, and all of these, we have to get the little self out of the way. Because the little self thinks supply is getting stuff, and the little self thinks love is, if I do this for you, you'll do this for me. Or the little self confuses being in love with being in heat. Or the little self has all these issues about love, but it doesn't know what love is.
When she was reading that, I was just thinking there's a whole package of concepts there can really get you into a lot of lack on what love ought to look like, and how it ain't in that person, or if it ain't here.
But if you think you know how it looks, you're back in the human world. It's like that, you've broken yourself from supply. You go within and feel God's love. And you don't feel God loving you because there ain't no such thing as a God that loves you. What there is the flow of God through you is one of the functions of God. Okay? So you can't go in and feel God's love, God loving me. Oh, yeah. But to the extent that I love, I'm feeling God's love. Okay?
Say that again. The flow of God's love through me as. What did you say?
I don't know. The tape. 801:14. I don't know what I said.
Like it's impersonal.
Yeah. I never love anyone intentionally. Okay? That doesn't work. You can't love somebody intentionally. You can just discover that you love somebody, or that there is love for someone. And You can recognize it by the fact that it's a behavior, not a feeling.
It seems there's a bit of impersonalness to it as well, because if you're loving someone, you're becoming attached, whether if love is just flowing out, it's a hate wherever you're.
Yeah, if you're loving someone, then first of all, you're that inhuman to cut off. Yeah, if you're in mystical, you can't love somebody if you're in mystical consciousness. You can love yourself in all your aspects. Okay? And you can't not love yourself in all your aspects if you're in the mystical consciousness. You see how it...
You feel it as it outflows.
Yeah. Or it feels itself as it outflows.
However it manifests.
Because there's only the one, so you can't. Can't love someone as distinct from someone else. Love your neighbor as yourself is a lot deeper than most people think it is. They think it means being nice to the next guy next door. But no, it means love your neighbor as if he were yourself, or in fact, as because he is yourself, the one self. But anyway, this is why I'm love. We have to do one on love too. Shall we do tithing? Let's move on. Who's next?
Tithing is one way to start a supply outflow. It's like priming a pump. Tithing is traditionally thought of as being 10% of our income, but what's important is to begin with a percentage we're comfortable with. 5% or less is fine. The percentage will probably increase as we continue because it feels good.
Love is the outpicturing of the belief that we lack. Abundance is the outpicturing of the belief that we have abundance. If we can start expressing the belief that we have, we turn our experience around. I don't have that.
Where's the book?
We begin tithing by picking an amount we're comfortable with and giving it to an appropriate recipient. Often we tithe to the place that is uplifting and fulfilling us spiritually, but any organization that we feel led to support is fine. Our attitude towards tithing is important. If we're focused on getting the other 90%, we're focusing on our lack, getting, and lack will continue. If we're tithing to demonstrate that we have, that we can give, that we will get, then that will begin to express as our experience. Tithing is the first bill we pay each month. We pay it out as the first fruit of the grace we are experiencing because we have and we can.
That's the whole point about tithing and about supply. I have, I can. Okay? And I give because I can, because I have and I can. And to whatever, to goodwill or tithing or love or service in the AA meeting, or I give there because I have time and I have the ability to show up and do the literature, you know. It's all from the viewpoint of I can. And that's what the flow. What's next?
Problems.
Oh, good. Let's wrap up problems now. That's a good one.
Now let's talk briefly about problems in general. I have a problem type problems. The fundamental principle of dealing with problems is never deal with the problem at the level of the problem. We've all heard that before. Now we have enough information to understand what that means. If we try to deal with the problem at the level of the problem, fix what we perceive as our problem out there, we're dealing with the world of effects, the outpicturing of the content of our consciousness in mind. We're trying to fix the effects of our beliefs and conditioning.
It's like standing in front of a mirror, not liking what we see and trying to improve the reflection by putting makeup on the glass. The problem is not in the mirror. The problem is in what's being reflected. When we're out there dealing with the problem, we're dealing with the reflection of our consciousness working on the image. We may seem to be able to fix the problem, but the consciousness that was being reflected is unchanged, and another problem just like it will show up. It may look different with different players in different costumes, but it's the same problem, and it will continue to manifest as long as we try to deal with it out there. What we need to do is change the content of the consciousness, which is causing the reflection of the mind.
Okay.
If we don't like what we're experiencing, we need to change our beliefs.
Change our minds.
If we're not experiencing
Mystical humor.
Go ahead.
if we're not experiencing harmony or being human, we're being some human belief. If we work on realizing the presence of what is in our lives, realizing what is harmony, then we're replacing the human belief, and the reflection will change and the problem resolve. It doesn't matter what kind of problems we have. They're always the outpicturing of our consciousness. It's the content of our consciousness that needs to change.
Okay, that's really simple to understand. Everybody hear that? Always any problem.
You heard that line you said, anytime you think something's wrong, sit down right where you are and ask yourself, what's the belief I'm holding on to that's keeping me from experiencing harmony?
Absolutely. I'm not happy, joyous, and free.
Okay,
right here, right now. The only sane thing to do is to sit down right here, right now, and go within and find out where I'm blocking my own happiness, joy, and freedom. Okay?
How long does that take?
Oh, about 30 seconds typically for me. It takes as long as it takes. Okay? But go within and find out, find the belief.
So that would work with relationships, medical issues, financial problems, whatever.
Yep.
Everything.
Keep that in mind as we go through the list of common problems. Now we're going to itemize a few problems. Hopefully they will all reflect that. Go ahead. Who's next?
Employment. Another difficulty which may bring us to this work is unemployment, or the lack thereof. The spiritual truth about lack of employment is that there can be no such thing. What is has expressed itself as individual you and me for its own purposes, and it does not express itself superfluously. It has expressed itself in infinitely many ways, and every expression is unique and part of fullness. In creation, there is no unemployment. So once again, the idea of unemployment is in human consciousness. As we go back to realizing what is as our lives, i.e. grace, the appearance of unemployment must change.
We must not confuse employment with income, however. What is not employed to make money. What we call employment is what is fulfilling itself. Spiritual employment is providing a service. There's no rule in spirit that says our supply has to come through our employment. That's a human fiction. As we grow spiritually, we become more aware of what we're doing here, what our purpose is. So we do that. It's fulfilling to us in the sense that it brings us joy, but it may not bring in a penny.
Our needs are met through our supply consciousness. We simply find employment which fulfills what we need, what we feel we're here to do. And because of the same grace which led us to understand how we're to be employed, we are also fulfilled in supply. If we are attuned to fulfilling the purpose for which what is expressed itself as us, then what is will not fail to provide itself expressed as us with whatever it requires. It's all one. It's all realizing the presence of what is, watching it unfold in our lives, and keeping the personal sense of self out of the way so that it can.
You think about that?
sounding practical.
That is very practical. That's why it's called practical mysticism. If you get it, it's the most practical thing you could possibly do. If you don't, it's an oxymoron.
So would you say that the more someone tries to, the more practice you have with trying to be aware of your oneness with what is, the more likely that you're going to have a sense of finding, discovering what feels like what you're here to do.
Exactly. Yeah. The more you get out of the way,
Okay.
the more clear it becomes what brings you joy. You can prevent your joy by being focused on finding a career that brings income. If you're confusing or marrying career and income, you're very likely to miss the joy-fulfilling employment. I remember the story of a brain surgeon who was accepting his retirement, they were having a big retirement gala for him when he was 65, and he apparently did some very unique brain operation that only he did for years and years and saved lots and lots of lives. And they were asking him, gee, how wonderfully fulfilled you must be to have saved all the lives of your career. And his honest answer was, I really always wanted to be a ballet dancer, but my parents made me be a doctor. Okay? Lots of income and missed his joy if he was to be a dancer. And the point is that if I'm doing what I'm expressed to do, how can I not be fulfilled? How can I, if God is doing here what it came here to do, how can it not meet its own needs? Yeah, what?
Oh, it's just what came to me is that I've experienced that every day. That when you come into work and ask, hey, how you doing? And always the answer's up here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like I believe this. I remember I first read this from a talk like 6 years ago, this whole thing, what you really want to do is your joy. But I think I know what mine is, but I'm not willing to go do it because I'm fearful.
Sure.
Does that mean that I really then don't believe it and I'm just bullshitting everybody? Because I believe that there are people in this world who have done that and have received the joy and the financial whatever, but is my being fearful of me trying mean that I really don't believe it, or just I don't believe it for me, or I'm still separating myself?
Or you don't believe it completely enough yet. You have to believe that pretty deeply. It really looks to human consciousness like going way out on a limb. Okay? And there are a lot of us who have careers that do bring us joy, by the way, and bring us big income, so that's quite possible. But
or maybe you'll get so in pain about what you're doing that you won't have any joy.
Maybe you will. Sometimes if God really wants you to do what He wants you to do this lifetime, you're going to lose your job. But.
See, I think that would be too easy for me personally. I think it's the choice.
Usually it is. Usually it is. I mean, it's your challenge to overcome this spiritual problem just like every other one. And it's hard work, and don't forget you've got a kid that doesn't, and to the extent that you still have kids, you're not free to do this. I mean, in the sense, I mean internal kids, and you're not free to do this just in the sense that they're way too afraid. Okay? And Barbara's whole point about the lowest common denominator is, that the most fearful kid in us determines where we operate. Okay? Because that kid will run our life. This terror will run our life. So you can't just go here and get this and do it. You also have to do the script work and the kid work. I keep saying, we really, and it came up in the other class too, it's a three-legged stool. You got to do script work, you got to do kid work, and you got to do this work to get free. And each one supports the other one. You need to do kid work probably to get through your script work. You need to know the truth to build enough spiritual adult to do the kid work. And you need to get script free, more script free, to get enough spiritual adult and good in there that you can do the kid work, which will allow you to do the script work. You know, it's circular, so you have to raise this leg a foot, and then you're an inch, and then you raise this leg an inch, and then it teeters, and then you raise this leg an inch, and then you raise this leg an inch, and it teeters. And, you know, it's a three-legged stool, and you have to keep going around raising them all, because you want your three-legged stool to be infinitely tall.
Yeah, on the work part, I always had an idea that meant that for me to be in my joy, I should be doing something, you know, more creative, and it wasn't presenting itself. And, you know, I would ask about that, you know, talk to my sponsor, and she would say, well, that must not be what you're meant to do yet. Mm-hmm. And then what happened was the job that I have that I thought wasn't the job that was supposed to give me joy has been giving me a lot of joy. Sure. So the irony is, of course, I thought I knew what that was supposed to, you know, it's supposed to be ballet or painting or, you know, like that, and it's this corporate job.
When you get into transcendental consciousness, you will suddenly discover creativity. And you will suddenly be very creative, but it may not be the source, have anything to do with the source of income. It may be the sideline for some people. Other people whose function, so to speak, whose God script, we call it God, whose God script is to be creative, are, you know, writing symphonies when they're 3, like Mozart, you know. I mean, some people are their job is to be creative, and other people's job is to be of service in other areas. And I remember when I lost my job through willfulness back in '84. I was doing a computer system for a big law firm in Beverly Hills, and I decided that this work wasn't spiritual enough for me, that these people were not spiritual, and that was not spiritual enough for me. And I had a real clear understanding all of a sudden that this work just wasn't sufficiently spiritual enough for me. And the next day, I was cut out of their budget. Okay? And I had no work for like 6 months while I was out there looking for a job that would meet my criteria of being spiritual enough and pay me the kind of salary that these Beverly Hills lawyers. You know, I was looking for an $80,000 a year job from the Little Sisters of Mercy or something. I don't know what what I thought could possibly happen. You know, I had this idea that I was going to make scads of money being of spiritual service. You know, and I worked with that for like 5 or 6 months, get further and further and further and further in depth. And one day I saw it. You know, I just, oh, shit. And so I said, all right, don't put anything in front of me you don't want me to do, because I'm going to do everything you put in front of me from now on. And the next day, I got a call from a lady who was doing a startup business out of her house on the Strand in El Porto. And she wanted me to come over and do some consulting, okay? So it was a real clear lesson, but I had no idea what service was, and I had no idea what I was talking about. And I got such a clean, hard lesson that I've trusted that since.
And to the word creativity, it depends on your concept of creativity. A lot of people think, like, you know, creativity is the art through their music, and really, we are all creative principles. So, and, you know, God is moving through us or working through us or, you know, as us. It is a creative expression. So everything we're doing is creative. It's just the way you look at it and you define creativity.
That's the way I cook books. Very creative.
I'm doing whatever's right in front of me, and I've been doing that for 3 years, and since 9/11, because my industry just took it, whatever, and that's time for a career change. And so then now, and I didn't ask for this to happen, but so now I'm in a law office, and they want me to be a lawyer, and I'm thinking, well, I'm aggressive, you know, which would be a good part of being a lawyer, and intimidating, but So it's very confusing for me because, you know, I'm down at the bottom of the barrel. I'm like making the money of a 19-year-old living off the strand. And then my supply is, you know, what I like tinkering, so I give away a lot of computers. And so it's just confusing of what to do. So I just do it and then watch, you know, the material things go away, whatever, or appear or not. So I'm always confused on the, you know, supply. Robert lives in a little apartment, you know, I'm assuming, right? And so I'm assuming supply isn't really material or food or water. It's just more.
But it looks like it.
Oh, it does.
When you're hungry or thirsty or it's raining outside.
Because when they're saying abundance, how many people say they have abundance in their life? You know, go forth and be fruitful. I'm always curious if that is in the same context as supply.
Yep, that's what we're talking about.
And it would be different for everybody, right? Because your mind forms what your concept of that is. So again, you can't.
Within parameters. But yeah, you know, your intellect determines the picture, but it's within parameters of your vocation. That's the right word, vocation, rather than employment. Okay, let's do business.
Many people claim it's impractical to run a business according to spiritual principles because the other guys aren't. The other guys are out there doing it cutthroat, lying, cheating, and advertising falsely. But this is human consciousness again. Humans treat business situations just like they treat international situations. Internationally, they're always looking for a bigger, better power to overcome other nations. And professionally, they're looking for a bigger, better salesman to overcome the competition, for a bigger, better product, for a bigger, better advertisement. Once again, they're out there trying to find a way to overcome and to find more power.
Spiritually, my business is doing what is expressed itself as myself to do. If I am engaged in the business or service which I was expressed to do, how could I fail? If what is in my consciousness, how could I not be provided with everything necessary to accomplish that service? How could what is not provide itself with what it needs to do what is manifested itself to do? This awareness will result our business functioning successfully without taking anything away from anyone else, including competitors. Does what is compete with itself?
Okay. So business, once again, is a legal faith in the human world. But if your vocation looks like a business, and if you've correctly discovered what your vocation is, in the sense of what it is you're here to do, then the business must work for as long as it must work, as long as it's intended to work. And it will survive. It can't not. By the same reason that individuals will fulfill similar business will be fulfilled. Because the business, by the way, is a reflection of the consciousness of the founder of the business, the main person in the business.
It seems like these are like applications of the emptying out process. Like, first thing you have to do is forget all the lies that you were told in the very beginning about how you have more, there's not enough for them, and all that kind of stuff.
That's right.
It's more, these are like specific emptying out.
You have to turn everything around that you've been conditioned to believe. That's all. Just everything you believe. It is exactly right. You only got to change one thing, everything. Put your shoes on in the other direction, everything. But let's do 2 more, and we'll start with spiritual healing next time, because I think we're going to spend a while there. So let's do companionship and relationships, and then we'll call it an evening, okay? Who's next?
Okay, companionship. By now, perhaps, we're beginning to see that all of these human difficulties are exactly the same. They are all a lack of grace. If we want more companionship, we let it flow. We can be companions to as many people as we find. Okay, let me read that again. We can be companions to as many people as we find it in ourselves to befriend. We can start experiencing companionship by taking care of a plant or a pet. And it's like emptying our closets of the things we don't wear to find the supply from. By becoming companions, we experience more companionship, and that will be reflected back to us as others who become our companions. After all, we are only being companions to ourselves.
That's funny, but I put that comment about the plant and the cat and the pet for a reason. When I first got sober, I was very shut down and very damaged, and I lived in a one-car garage. I mean, it was a converted one-car garage, but it was the size of a one-car garage. It had a little window, and it had a little kitchenette, and it had a bathroom, and that was about it. And I was absolutely a loner, and just bristly as I could be, and all alone. And I did, in fact, finally got tired of living alone and bought a plant. And I took care of the plant, and it flourished, and I finally went to a friend who had a cat who had a litter of kittens, and got a kitten and brought the kitten home, you know, and started there, you know. So, yeah, that's practical.
Now, when you say companion, then understanding, well, when I did my kid work initially, the very first time, I wanted plants because my kid wanted a plant and said, I want a plant, so I had to go buy one. And when I did my meditations, I was like being as one with mineral vegetation and such. So are you saying that companionship as in, as with self, as one with mineral, vegetable, you know,
When I did that, and it worked, I wasn't thinking of that at all. I was just thinking of having, you know, I moved from having nothing living in my life to having something living in my life. And
so I'm saying with the word companionship.
I'm talking about companionship in all the senses of it.
Right.
Everybody, many people who come to the mystical path come because they lack. Many people come to the mystical path because they lack employment. Many people come to the mystical path because their business doesn't work. Many people come to the mystical path because they want companionship. Okay? So I'm talking about practical, everyday things that we're experiencing that drive people to the mystical path. So I'm talking about companionship, like, you know, I want a friend to hang out with, or a woman in my life, or stuff like that. It's what it looks like to people when they come to the mystical path, when they start seeking.
Because I got my plant was thrown into trash, and I pulled it out and named it Robert Plant. And he's still hanging around.
Cool. All right, let's do relationships and call it an evening, okay?
Relationships. Any problems that we think we have in relationships to well-intentioned results are based on what appears to be conflict of interest, but what is does not have conflicts of interest with itself. That's all we need to know about conflict in relationships. What is does not have two expressions of itself which are in conflict. What is fulfilled, complete, finished, so there can be no conflict of interest. When we realize this, the picture changes and the conflict solves.
It may look humanly like we sit down together and address the question of how we can have a conflict of interest. We both are interested in the success of our spiritual growth individually and mutually, and in the success of our partnership, so there can't really be a conflict of interest.
An apparent conflict means we're not clear about what our interests really are or about how to best serve them.
We can work with this practically. We meditate together for a few minutes, then we identify our interests and see if we still have a conflict, or still see a conflict. If we still see a conflict, we meditate again, trying to realize who we really are for a few more minutes, and check our interests again. We keep this up until we recognize that there is no conflict of interest. Then we discuss how to serve our common interests.
Okay.
So in a partnership or a marriage, you were talking about in a business, the supply take on the consciousness of the principal. How does that work when if you have joint finances in a partnership or a marriage? Does it take on the consciousness of both parties, or?
Yeah, it really does. Usually the operating level of the partnership, marriage, or what have you, is the lowest common denominator. If one of you has really clear supply consciousness and the other one doesn't, then you can't make mutual decisions based on really clear supply consciousness, because the one who doesn't have that consciousness is afraid. Okay? So you will typically wind up operating as the lowest common denominator in every case.
Well, couldn't it be that, and I said this the other day, I look in the refrigerator and I say, Mom, there's nothing to eat, and then she makes a stew. So couldn't I just be living in abundance and my
If you can,
partner
that's
is
fine.
living in lack?
If I'm talking about, you can do that. I'm talking about mutual decisions that you have to make, like let's go buy a house together, or let's go spend $20,000 here, or we have plenty. You know, I mean, there are joint decisions and there are individual decisions. And of course, your own money, you spend however you want to, do whatever you want to, have your own consciousness.
So what do you do about the areas? It says, an apparent conflict means we're not clear about what our interests really are or how to best serve them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what seems to come up for me a lot. Is I don't see how, I have a disagreement in how best to serve them. You know, and those seem to be, so realize who you really are.
Is it clear that you, in the case you're thinking of, is it clear to both of you what the interest is, what it is that wants to be accomplished here? What is it we need to do here to ensure our individual and our mutual spiritual growth? What is it we need to do here?
It's really about me not seeing value in something that Steve's doing.
So you think you have a different interest from him. He has an interest in pursuing this, and you have an interest in pursuing this. So you need to.
No, I have an interest in him pursuing this.
That's even harder.
Right. I'm not in conflict with myself.
So that's a conflict of interest.
Right.
And you need to go within and meditate on this, probably together, until you can understand and talk about it, until you both realize what the interest is here. Because your plan or his plan will probably, one or the other plan will probably in fact serve what you both are trying to accomplish better.
What if your partner isn't on a spiritual path?
That's why I said this works between well-intentioned spiritual adults. If your partner's not on a spiritual path, then you can do your own work and take care of yourself.
Can you just have separate thinking?
Do whatever you want, son. I don't care.
Yeah, right up until you quit your job.
It seems, though, when you're talking with a married couple as an institution, that's human consciousness.
I didn't mention the word marriage here.
I understand that, but we're talking about partnership, and then we're talking about material, acquiring material things.
No,
I'm hearing it wrong then.
Yes.
What am I not hearing?
Talking about two people who are together, by my definition, the reason for a relationship between adults is mutual spiritual growth. Okay? Grow spiritually. And whatever, if you both are trying to, if the purpose of the partnership is to, in a supportive way, ensure mutual spiritual growth, then you can discuss any conflicts you have from the viewpoint of, well, this is, I don't see that this is supporting your spiritual growth, or I don't see that this is supporting my spiritual growth, or I don't see that this is supporting our spiritual growth, and talk about that and discover. If you meditate together and work together, you will have to become clear what is the best thing to do today in this circumstance. And tomorrow the situation may be exactly opposite. The same situation may require the opposite solution because we did it this way today, and now the need is here. But it is true that God has no conflicts of interest. And it is true that you are both God. So there can't be a conflict of interest there. So there's a perception problem. And it's a reflection of the extent to which one or both of you are immersed in human consciousness and seeing things from the viewpoint of personal self.
And a belief in lack. That's what it's that.
You believe in lack, or you believe in, there is some sense of personal self there that is not being met.
I've heard in a meeting that this guy said, we were talking about putting $2 in opposing $1. And he said, well, I have a mortgage now and a new car, so I can only put in $1. And his wife said, well, the reason you have a house and a new car is because of the program, but I'm not going to tell you to put in $2. And it kind of looked like what you're talking about is they were in agreement that their tithing of $1 was enough, spiritually. I mean, is that what you're discussing? Or does that make sense?
No, I'm wondering why you're telling us that. I don't see.
Well, because I'm trying to understand when you say partnership. If I'm a partner and I have a man that owns a company with me, and we need to make these business decisions, right? And he's my partner in this company, and I want to buy this, and he wants to pay for that, then you're saying that we need to meditate on it, and it will grow the company. The company will flourish if we're connected on the one decision, and it may or may not.
Assuming that the company's purpose is something to grow spiritually and provide a service, then it will become clear if you meditate together on what is the correct step to take with that money to fulfill the aims. Let's get quiet. We'll finish next week. Usually, I think. Okay, thanks for coming. See you next Monday. We'll wrap this up.
I have, Jack.